Today on Cyberwork Hacks, Infosec Boot Camp instructor Wilfredo Lanz will give you a mini Microsoft Azure certification study class. Wilfredo has created practice questions for the AZ-104 and AZ-500 cert exams.
The exam also has hands-on questions like labs in which they are going to ask you not too long. They may take about 5-7 minutes max, but they're going to ask you to deploy the resource.
Think you have what it takes? Tune in for today's Cyberwork Hack.
The IT and cybersecurity job market is thriving. Bureau of Labor Statistics predicts 377,500 new IT jobs annually. You need skill and hustle to obtain these jobs, of course, but the good news is that cybersecurity professionals can look forward to extremely competitive salaries. That's why Infosec has leveraged 20 years of industry experience, drawing from multiple sources to give you, Cyberwork listeners, an analysis of the most popular and top-paying industry certifications. You can use it to navigate your way to a good-paying cybersecurity career. So to get your free copy of our Cybersecurity Salary Guide ebook, just click the link in the description below. It's right there near the top, just below me. You can't miss it. Click the link in the description and download our free Cybersecurity Salary Guide ebook. Your cybersecurity journey starts here. Now, let's get the show started.
Welcome to a new episode of Cyberwork Hacks. The purpose of this spin-off of our popular Cyberwork podcast is to take a single fundamental question and give you a quick, clear, and actionable solution, as well as new insights into how to utilize Infosec products and training to achieve your work and career goals. So my guest today, Wilfredo Lanz, is an Infosec instructor specifically for our Microsoft Azure Dual Certification Boot Camp. Now, Azure is an industry-dominant cloud computing platform whose knowledge is crucial for a wide range of job roles, from cloud administrator to cloud security to GRC and many, many other job roles. So Wilfredo is going to talk us through some study strategies for Azure certification, and he's also prepared some practice questions for us, so you can find out at home if you are ready to start learning about Azure. So thank you for joining me today, Wilfredo. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris.
So Wilfredo, can you break down the different types of exam questions on these Azure certifications? Are these slanted toward multiple choice, hands-on problem-solving questions, or other types of questions?
Yeah, absolutely. For both exams, the majority of the questions are the multiple choice type,
Okay.
in which you get a question and then you got 4 or 5 different choices and you select one. In most cases, they may ask you to select 2 or 3.
Yep.
That's the majority of the questions. However, other questions included on the exam are of the drop-down menus, in
Okay.
which you are asked a question with multiple options. You have to select one from a drop-down menu. Other questions include the drag and drop type of questions,
Mm-hmm.
because most of the questions are related to configurations and settings to see if you understand how you have hands-on experience deploying
Right.
resources and
Right.
managing configurations. So there are questions in which they show you a screenshot, for example, of a container configuration or a storage account. And then you have to click on the area that you need, based on the question, that you need to modify the setting, or
Got
that
it.
you identify the problem in a troubleshooting question. The exam also has hands-on uh, questions like labs in which they are going to ask you not too long. They may take about 5-7 minutes max, but they are going to ask you to deploy the resource.
Hmm.
For example, they may ask you, can you complete the deployment of a virtual machine with some specific settings? Or can you identify the problem with this storage account? Or can you connect these two networks? So there will be, people need to be prepared to hands-on execute commands to answer those questions.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, and I think that can be potentially intimidating. So I'm really glad that you've brought us some samples here that you created yourself. These are not necessarily going to be on the exam itself. These are things that Wilfredo created that are in the style of the questions you would see on these two Azure certification exams. So, Wilfredo, when you're ready, if you want to share your screen here, we can take a look at some of the questions you brought for us.
Absolutely. Let's do that. Just a couple of questions here.
Great. Okay.
So I will go ahead. This is a type of question, but I will show you also how we handle these questions. For example, right? Here is a typical question for the exam. This will be for the AC 104, right?
Right.
If you look at this question, they are asking, you have to read the questions carefully. In this case, they typically would start with something like this. You got an Azure subscription, and then you have a network security group, and then which two resources can be associated with a network security group. So that tells you that of the 5 options here, 2 of them needs to be in the answer, right? So in a case like this, and we will talk hopefully about how we handle this in our practice, training. We show people specifically how they will do do this configuration, because it will not only this question can also be part of a hands-on question on the exam, in which they're going to ask you, how would you do this? How would you apply that network security group to network interfaces and subnets? So when we go here, right, let me show you that the answer is C and D. So
Okay.
network interfaces and subnets. Over here, when we I have access here to an Azure account, and I have, for example, a network security group.
Yes.
Just the exam, you cannot just memorize answers. You need to know how to do this. So here is a network security group. We show people the settings of the network security group, and then in here, that's a network security group. That's the network security group name. And under the settings, we see the 2 options that would answer that question properly, right? Either network interface or subnet. So it is important to have hands-on experience to be able to answer these questions properly.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Okay, so that's something that you wouldn't know unless you have actually sort of gotten into the sort of Azure interface and seen, and sort of remembered that these are the pieces of the configuration there. So that's a great, because it would be really easy, I suppose, if you were guessing to just say, well, it's the 2 that say Azure in the name, or a firewall is a security thing, so you could pick that. But in this case, you need to actually have been in Azure itself.
Absolutely. The hands-on experience is very important.
Yep.
Here is another one, right? A good
Okay.
example. If you look at this question, right, this is another one and this is a common one in which you have to do it in an exam. Create a storage account. They are telling you you need to create a storage account, and there are some specific requirements here. You can create a storage account with all other requirements, but they specifically want the storage account to span multiple regions. And they want to be able to have a primary and a secondary region with reading capabilities.
Okay.
And what you see here are all these are options for storage accounts. You can create this one, and you can create this one, and this one, and this one. But the only one that would allow you to do what they're asking here, to span more than one region and be able to have reading capabilities from the primary and the secondary region, is the geo-redundant storage. When we see here, okay, is C. But these are things you cannot memorize. If we go back here again to the storage, to the Azure account that I have here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we look at the storage account. I have an storage account here. When I look at this storage account, so you see here, this is a storage account name over here, right?
Mm-hmm.
VTX00A.
Yep.
And then let's see the two requirements that they have here, right? So when I go to this storage account capabilities, right, and go to the redundancy, I see graphically, right, that this storage account has a primary region. This blue here is saying it's a primary region, and it
Mm-hmm.
has a secondary. So we can visually see that this storage account complies with the requirement of being across more than one region. The
Yeah.
data goes to the primary region, is replicated to this secondary region, and you can read data from the secondary region. Do we know that because here it says read access is explicitly saying that this account is a read access geo redundant storage right here, and that's the answer to that question. On the practice, you need to know how to do this, how you create this account,
I see.
and test that, right? Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. So you're not you're basically needing to know this well enough that you know that that's the thing you need to create in the sort of hands-on aspect, and not just know that that's the option that this question asks for. So you're thinking beyond just that question, and in terms of the sort of hands-on things that'll be happening beyond as well, by knowing that you need the primary and the secondary read access sites.
Absolutely. An understanding of the hands-on allows you to answer these questions,
Yep.
with certainty, right?
Right.
So we got one more here on the
Great.
104, right?
Awesome.
Um, look at this one here.
Okay. We have two virtual networks named VNet1 and VNet2. Okay.
So on this one, two virtual networks in Azure, a virtual network will not allow connectivity to another virtual network unless you configure something in between. And that's what
Okay.
they're asking. What is that something
Right.
that would allow the resources from VNet 1 to connect to resources on VNet 2?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is going to be you need to configure something called peerings
Okay.
between those two. No other option here is valid. So when we
All
go
right.
here, we see peerings, and this is another one that I will show you that we practice. We do hands-on in all this. I have two virtual networks here. So I go to my Azure account, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I can see here that I have two virtual networks.
Okay.
One is called the East VNet. That is because it's in the East US region. And the other one is called the West VNet. That is in the West, it's across the US. West region, East region. To make these two to connect, right? So I have to configure something called peering. And when I go here to one of them, and I go to the properties of the virtual network, so here it tells me that this is my virtual network, that is the name of the virtual network.
Mm-hmm.
Down here, there is something called peerings.
Okay.
When I click there, then I see that there is a peerings
Ah, yes.
configuration set between the East VNet
And
and
the
the
West.
West VNet.
Nice.
And I can see that it's fully synchronized, that is connected.
Yes.
So in preparation for the exam, if you do this, you know how to identify if a peerings configuration that is well done, and you can test it, then that will prepare you much better for the exam. These questions, that those three that I show you there, are typical 104 Azure administrator questions. Then we got a couple here for the security.
Okay,
Again,
great.
here, as we mentioned, when you do Azure Administrator, you on that certification, you learn how to manage, deploy resources operationally. Here is how you secure them.
Great.
So here is an example. Take a look.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Need to ensure that user one can create data in container one. What role should you assign to user one? Okay.
Yeah, this is a typical one, and these questions can be challenging because there are hundreds of different roles that you can configure in Azure. There are built-in roles, right? And there are
Mm-hmm.
the custom ones you create. So to be familiar with this, right, you need to practice. For example, in this case, the only role that would allow to do that is this role because you want to maintain the principle of least privilege. This will be too expensive, it will give the user more than what they need.
Mm.
In this case, right, you don't
Uh-huh.
want to do that. And these two here will not be enough for what they want to do.
Okay.
And this is another example, right? When I go back here to the Azure subscription that I have here, right? And I go to an storage account.
Okay.
When I go to this storage account, I go to the container. So here the storage account is here. This is the name of the storage account. I go to the containers
Mm-hmm.
and I see that there is a container here called reports. That's to put data and so on, right? When I go there, then what they want to know is what role will be allowed that user to write data into this container. I go there to the identity and access management. And when I go here to look for roles, there are many, there are hundreds, all these are roles, right?
Mm-hmm.
In this case, there are 46 roles that I can assign just on this section. Then if I do here, look for a contributor role, then I would look for the role that you see there is an Azure data contributor. There
Okay.
is a down here there are multiple roles, but the one that we need is the contributor role that they mentioned here, right? Which is the storage blob data contributor. So
Okay.
I would just find the storage blob and then right here, the storage blob data contributor. And the question is, how do I know that the role has
Yeah.
those permissions? Well, I mean, we practice that a lot.
Okay.
Here, there is a view section for each role. So when I click there, I can see the permissions associated with the role. For example, I can filter, do the role has right permissions? And I see that it has right permissions to change and create data associated with containers. So there are ways for us to validate every single question that we answer is not because we just remember, it's because we know how to do it, how to verify it.
Yeah. Yeah. Looks good. Okay. Well, that's. I want to ask you more about that later, but let's go to the next one here. I want to
All
see.
right.
Yeah.
Let's this one. Well, this is also this question is a very interesting one because when we think about Azure, Azure is the Microsoft cloud
Right.
offering,
Right.
right, to
Specific.
manage resources, but you can extend some of the services that you have in Azure
Oh
to
yeah.
manage resources in other clouds and even on premises. And this question is specifically on that topic. Take a look.
Yes. Okay. So Defender for Cloud, that's the Azure sort of security suite.
Correct. The Defender for Cloud is a Microsoft security service, right, that you have access. But they're asking, okay, is that for Azure only? And it's not. It allows you to also manage Amazon virtual machines or containers you may have in an Amazon account. You can monitor and apply security to those resources using Defender for Cloud. Azure DevOps, which is a development environment that you can have outside Azure. On premises, you can also access resources, and GitHub, which is a major uh, development hub for companies to have developers
Yeah.
creating,
Yeah.
writing code.
Huge.
All these three you can manage from Defender for Cloud. And again, like everything else, we have to see it to believe it.
Yes.
We have to do it, right, to make sure
Absolutely.
that we understand it. So if we go here to this subscription and I go to the Microsoft Defender for Cloud, so that's where I am now on the
Okay.
Microsoft Defender for Cloud. It's a major security service, right?
Yep.
So when I go there and I go to the, let me go to the environment settings here. When I want to add an environment setting, I see that I can add, let me show you this here. You see, I can add an Amazon Web Services account.
Yep.
If I click there, I just enter my Amazon account, my credentials, of course, right?
Okay. Locks it
Go
right
over
in.
a couple of options, and I have access to the Amazon resources. From a security standpoint, I can manage them from here. And that is true for Azure DevOps, GitLab, Docker Hub. As you can see, these are environments that exist outside Azure, but you can reach out to them using the Defender for Cloud.
Nice.
All right, and then the last one we have here uh, is this one is a major part of Azure security, managing identities. Especially on the AC 500, you practice how to manage multi-factor authentication, conditional access policies, how to protect identities, and this is one related to that. Take a look.
Okay. So this is involving a Microsoft Entra tenant. Could you tell us a little bit about what that is?
Microsoft Entra tenant is a new name for something that most people are familiar with, something called Active Directory.
Oh,
So
okay.
if you manage Active Directory on premises, when Azure started back in 2010, that when they went public, they call it Azure Active Directory until last year, in which
Ah,
they renamed Azure Active Directory and call it Microsoft Entra Tenant. This is a directory service, right?
great.
In this case, the question is that you want to configure a couple of things, right? Lockout threshold and lockout duration, those two.
Got it.
Threshold and lockout duration in
Lockout duration.
Microsoft Entra. Well, the answer in this one is where you have to do the Entra ID protection, or in this case, the Microsoft Entra password protection. So in this case, right, the Microsoft Entra password protection, like
Okay.
everything else, right? So if we go and take a quick look, okay, where is this? How do I configure that? Where we go to Microsoft Entra, and then we will be able to see that that option is there. I go to Microsoft Entra here, right? Go to the security section on Microsoft Entra, go to authentication in here, right? And then you can see that there is a section here called password protection, which is the answer to that question. Where do you configure the threshold and the account lockout?
Yes.
So password protection. And then we see that very clear here, right? You see in the password protection section, there's an account lockout threshold there that you can configure and a lockout duration that you can configure. That's what they are asking. Where do
Excellent.
you go to configure that? So by doing all these hands-on, the questions become easier to answer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's no way I would have been able to deduce that just based on the names or the sort of what they seem to suggest. Like, it really does require you to know the sort of ins and outs of the platform and the ins and outs of the interface and so forth. So, yeah, that was a really great walkthrough. Is that all the questions then?
Absolutely, yeah. Those are, to keep it short, right?
Okay, great. Yeah, so let's
I will stop sharing now, Chris,
okay,
right? All
great.
right.
Yeah, you can unshare your screen. Okay, great. So I just had a couple more questions on that. So, well, obviously, basically, our listeners have just gotten a little taste of what a boot camp with Wilfredo would look like. But can you tell our listeners a little bit more? What type of uh, what would be the experience of doing the InfoSec Azure dual certification boot camp with you be like? How will they learn, and what can they expect from the experience? It looks like you're going to really go deeply into the mechanics of Azure, both on a security and on a administration side.
So the boot camp, especially the boot camp that we do with InfoSec, is a comprehensive approach to learn and to prepare people for the exam. Of course, there is a intense, fast-moving training in which we got, 4 or 5 days, 7 days in the case of the two certifications to cover the content that Microsoft requires the objective to prepare for the exam. And it's very hands-on. So from day one, we start doing labs, and then we do practice questions like the ones we just review here. And for every question, we have to know how to do it. It's by doing it that we
Yeah,
learn
yeah.
to answer and to prepare for the exam. We got a question. Memorization does not work well for these exams
Oh,
because
clearly.
these exams, absolutely, they require you to know how to do it. The hands-on, I mean, reading and listening to tapes is not enough. It can
Yeah.
help to refresh ideas, but doing it. So in the boot camp, we are very intense on the hands-on and concentrated on the relevant topics for the exam. But InfoSec offers recording of the training.
Yep.
They support practice questions,
Mm-hmm.
support content. Students have access to the labs for several months after the
Yep.
class ends. So there is a comprehensive approach here that is all targeted to the success of anybody that wants to get the certification.
Yeah. Now, to that end, because you said that you have the practice questions for months afterwards, when you're taking your students are taking the boot camp, is it common for them to go straight from the boot camp into the exams, or do they spend a little time kind of marinating in what they learned and then take the exam at some point later? And if so, which do you think is preferable?
Well, that is very personal.
Okay.
We always tell people go to the exam when you feel ready
Mm-hmm.
to take the exam. Now, my recommendation on every boot camp is, if possible, take it in the last day of the boot camp. Just
Okay.
go right after when the class ends, right? Go
And
and
that's
take
an
it.
option that you offer, right?
Absolutely. We
Okay.
offer it when some on-site boot camps, they can test in the last day, and for the online, they can register for the last day. And the reason we emphasize this is because we concentrate during those days on hands-on labs and practice questions. Really,
Yeah.
that's 100% of the time. We are doing labs, reviewing some content, managing the labs, or practicing questions. So by the end of the week, if somebody follows the system of practicing questions every day and doing the labs, they should be ready to test.
All right, one last question here. Regardless of whether you choose to take the Azure right after the boot camp or after, say, a couple more months of focus study, do you have any advice for the exam day itself and actually taking the exam? Is this something where it makes more sense to sort of like go fast on a first pass and then come back to the harder ones, or do you want to like work on each thing as it happens and not jump around?
So in preparation for the exam, we do recommend that you do, tiny wins every day, a little bit,
Yep.
practice, don't stop, even if you have only a few minutes, do preparation daily. And do not try to cram the
Mm-hmm.
night before, like put in an overnighter because the exam
Yeah.
is tomorrow morning. That doesn't work in most cases.
No,
As we
you're exhausted.
mentioned, yeah, and memorization is not going to help much with these exams. These are
No.
practical questions. You need to understand how to do it. On exam day, right, if you are going to a testing center, try to go a little earlier, 15 minutes, so that you feel comfortable there. When you start the exam, Microsoft exams allow you to mark a question and come back later.
Right.
You do not have to answer every question as they come. Actually, I recommend, especially when you start the exam, if the first or second question they are difficult, you don't need to answer that. Put a mark on it, keep going, find some easy ones, get some confidence, start
Yep.
feeling better,
Yep.
and then you can tackle those
Yeah.
again. Also, do not spend too much time on a question. If you
Yes.
read a question 1, 2 minutes, you are still not sure, mark it, keep going. Maybe you come back later with more clarity. But you have to time yourself, especially when you have 2 or 3 labs to do
Yeah.
on the exam.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's it would be real easy to get sort of too focused on one particular question that you might not ever get, and then you lose 7 questions that would have been like just easy checkoffs for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, this is all great advice. Well, Wilfredo, thank you for helping us to. I think our listeners are going to be pretty stoked about Microsoft Azure after this presentation. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And as always, thank you for watching and listening to CyberWork Hacks. If you enjoyed this video and felt it helped you, please definitely share it with colleagues, forums, on your social media accounts. If you have friends that are studying for the Azure or other cloud certs, let them know that you've got a really good inside scoop on how to get your study kickstarted here. So for more hacks and more feature-length conversations with cybersecurity thought leaders, also don't forget to tune into CyberWork both on video via YouTube and as a podcast in all of the usual podcast places. And if you like the hacks format like this, check out previous videos on everything from creating a disaster recovery plan to cheaply and easily building a home cybersecurity practice lab. So that's it. So until next time, this is Chris and Wilfredo saying good luck and happy learning.